Hello, comic book fans. Today we're talking about Lost Fantasy Issue 3. Now, with each book that I read, it gets more intense and it's keeping this subtleness about it, right? It's keeping this groundedness level about it while also escalating the situation and adding new things to the lore. If you remember the ending of the last issue, Henry Blackheart, the guy with the eye patch and white hair, he for some reason started attacking his partner. And we find out why in this book. Because a lot of has been happening to him just from book 1 to 3. First he was shot in the head by a rifle, right? He was shot in the head, survived that, lost his eye because of that, and now this is going on with him. And his partner Nihilus, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, he's like, this isn't you, like, what's going on? And we know something is wrong with him because his eye is red, and he's swinging his freaking giant, like, 7-foot sword at Nihilus, and Nihilus is barely dodging and surviving the incoming attacks. And we find out what's wrong with him. He has a mind worm, kind of like I remember this something like this being shown and talked about in like Dungeons and Dragons or Baldur's Gate 3, like the mind flare. But it's a mind worm that is in his head, and the reason why that happened was he used an ability he has to like look into somebody's mind, right? And I believe it was somebody that was already dead, to look into their mind to find out what they knew. And when he did that, the mind, it was a trap. So the mind worm got into his head and then it started to control him. Now we take a break from that incident because we are now showing the leaders of these domains, right? The leaders, like, they all have their own territory of what they control. These are the hierarchy beings of magic, right? These are the hierarchy beings in this entire universe. And they're all sitting here, and one in particular, which is the head of Montana, he knows that somebody else in this room is creating, BS within his territory. He knows that something is going on. He's not hiding behind the bush about it. He's like, something's going on. Somebody in this room is guilty of it. And he you can tell by the way he's speaking, he kind of already knows who it is, but he's not gonna come out directly and say it because, like he says, he has somebody working on the case, right? He has somebody looking into it for him. And everybody else here, they're like, that's some pretty heavy accusations. You're saying that somebody in this room is up to devious works. And he's like, trust me, I'm going to get the evidence. I already have somebody on it. And when I am done, like when the case is over, I'm coming back for said person. And so now the hierarchy beings are fighting amongst themselves, kind of, because somebody is guilty. And honestly, when I was reading this, I already kind of know who it was. And by the end of the book, I was right because it's so obvious, right, on how the characters talk and look. And back with Nihilus, he has Blackheart in a chokehold just to keep him still, just for the other guy to come and take the mind worm out of his ear. Now, there's a part I did not put in here, is that they talk about the origin of how to take the mind worm out. It's a high pitch frequency type of device that was used in the 1700s. So this is a very old the mind worm, the concept of the mind worm taking somebody over, it's a very old concept. And the last person that did that ended up killing his entire village. So whoever did this is very old, very ancient, or they at least know very old, very ancient ways. And finally, Blackheart is, awake and didn't do too much damage to him. But Nihilus is sick of Blackheart's BS because of past situations, and it keeps coming up, and nobody's really being direct about it until Nihilus starts speaking, and he pretty much tells him his face, like, that mission back then, that was you let them into your mind, you let them take advantage of you, you wouldn't be here today unless I saved you, etc., etc. And now Blackheart is by himself. He's trying to remember the image he saw before the mind worm took him over. And he's trying to use his ability again. He's trying to think of the image. And I like how they have it blurred out, like from panel to panel. And you can see him trying to put the pieces back together. And I also like the description that they give on how it feels trying to get that description back. And he's finally remembers, and his nose even starts bleeding. That's how hard he's using his ability trying to regain that image. And luckily he does. And the person that is guilty is the sheriff from the beginning. And this part, I really enjoy this part of the story between Nihilus and Blackheart, because before they go further with the case, Nihilus, like, before he tells Blackheart, before we go further, let's squash this right now, right? Either you take responsibility for what happened and we understand that, or you could work this case alone. And Blackheart sits there for a moment. He's like, we work better together, consider it dropped. And they handled the situation like men. They handle that situation. They drop their past beef, their past BS. They drop it right there so they can continue on with the case. That's excellent writing, in my opinion. And it's like, that's how men handle stuff, right? They're like, hey, let's just squash it right here. Let's handle it right here before we go any further. And they did. And so now they're able to be partners. They're able to be on the same page, and they're able to work this case properly moving forward. And the guy that Blackheart ended up stabbing in his chest survived, mostly because his body was being taken advantage of, and he's in a demon state, but he survived. And they all know who is guilty, which is the sheriff. So now they're all looking for the sheriff now, right? He's the main guy everybody's looking for. But while that's happening, apparently Blackheart and Nihilus walked into a trap because somebody was already watching the house and watching them, and they made a call to the police station. First of all, this is a very big house for a sheriff to have, and they're looking around for him. And both of them is like, I don't like this. It's way too quiet in here. And as they're looking, they find out what happened to the sheriff. He was tortured and beat to death. This guy is covered in his own blood in a chair. And so apparently he didn't do a good enough job for whoever he was working for, because they executed him right on the spot. And right when they see that the sheriff is dead and they understand that this was a trap, outside is completely covered in SWAT teams and other forms of law enforcement. And you have the main guy outside, telling them to fire, right? This is not an arrest. This is a complete execution. And it was made to, look guilty and be taken out. And so Nihilus asks Black, like, how are we doing this? He's like, the only way how. So they run out there with Nihilus with his lightsaber, because let's be fair, that's what that is. That's a complete lightsaber. And Blackheart runs out there with a sword. And they just start slicing these guys up like police. Like, they just start cutting up these, like, just body parts flying everywhere. And this is the part in the story that I'm confused about, because I'm like, you guys are also working a case, and you understand, at least to some extent, what's going on. I don't think you guys should have started slaughtering police officers, right? Even though if they was there to, like, take you guys on and execute you, I feel like the situation could have been handled differently without casualties. But these guys just start cutting these guys up, like absolutely destroying them physically. And Blackheart was with his 7-foot sword just hacking them down. And Nihilus saved Blackheart from a bullet to the skull. And it's funny because they even start arguing on, like, pretty much score. And they even show a panel of him just slicing the dude clear in half. And I'm just here thinking, I'm like, they're really going to think you guys did it now. Like, you guys are guilty to some extent now at this point, because even though you guys had done this, you guys was slaughtering police officers, right? And they end up taking everybody out until the main chief was all alone, and then they hunt him down, and then they catch him in the woods, and both Nihilus and Blackheart forces him to answer the questions, or else they're gonna take him out as well. And so now the town is without like a lot of police officers, right? But as soon as he starts talking about who, came to him, his nose starts bleeding and his head just explodes, right? Just like on impact. And like there was no impact, but as soon as he just started talking, his head exploded. And that's what, and they just stand like magic. Like, yeah, like that was magic that did that. And whoever this guy is in the hoodie, which was the main culprit in this entire story, he was slaughtered by the main guy being questioned amongst the hierarchy. He's one of them, the guy with the long white hair. He's the main guy that's guilty, and he's going to go and do it himself. Now he needs to tie up loose ends because he's going to get exposed very soon. So he's like, I gotta deal with this myself immediately. And he kills his own dude, and he's gonna go and deal with whoever else. And at the hospital, the little girl from the beginning, the survivor, she wakes up out of her coma somehow, some way. And she says, I need to speak to the guy with the white hair. And she says, I remember who killed everybody, who killed everyone. And that is the ending of the story. And that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you for watching.